Good morning, everybody. It is Friday, October 22nd, and I am Merritt. I am the founder and creator of Master of One Coaching. Hello, everyone on Facebook and YouTube land. Typically, I start this live every week with this fun little intro, and today's StreamYard is being a little fussy, so I did not able to get that going today. So I'll do my little jazz dance, though, for you, my intro dance, and then I'll set it up on the replay so you can catch it out there. Okay, cool. So I wanted to, first of all, say hello. So lovely to be back here again. Thank you so much for tuning in every Friday here at 10 a.m. Eastern. I am thrilled to talk about this topic today. It's one of my very favorite topics. And if you know me at all, you know that I'm a super geek about all things coaching and leadership. And this particular topic, the higher coach, the higher leader, in our business, the higher coach or the higher leader is one of my favorite topics, if not my very favorite topic. It is super, super dear and near to me. So, okay. So what do I mean when we're talking about your higher leader? Essentially, what I'm talking about is your intuition and your connection to your higher self. Now, some of you who are not familiar with these concepts, or maybe familiar but are not familiar with me talking about them much, might say, oh my gosh, she's going super woo-woo. And you know what? Yes, I am. I'm jumping in. Thank you, love. My wonderful husband just brought me my coffee. Isn't he wonderful? Yay, Tom. Yes. And I'm going to lean into the woo, y'all, today, because it is, I know, we talk about magic and we talk about intuition and we talk about spirit and source, and people get a little bit weirded out. So I'm going to ask you that if you get weirded out, to try to suspend your weirded outness and ask yourself what that's about, because we do so much in our world to split off parts of ourselves and become one part in one scenario and one part in another. And maybe we go to church, but it's just on Sunday, or maybe we meditate, but it's only in yoga class, or, we do all these things to kind of keep ourselves compartmentalized. But you know what that creates in us every single day? Anxiety and stress and depression, because we are denying our pieces of ourselves and we are showing up as other people. I'm going to say that a different way. I was going to say as other people want us to, but I'm actually going to say that a different way. As we think other people want us to, so that we can get the job or get the money or get the relationship. And we twist ourselves and turn ourselves and contort ourselves into images that we think we need to live into to impress other people, to please other people, or to be accepted. Because at the end of the day, our number one primary desire as humans is to be accepted and be safe and loved, right? And we kind of equate love and safety and acceptance all in the same bucket. So we feel love and accepted, we think we're safe. If we feel safe, we at least feel like we're safe enough to love ourselves enough to be safe. It all kind of gets mushed up together. So let me say it this way. We do all those things, all that contorting, right, to get ourselves in a place where we think we can be safe and loved and accepted. Here's the weirdest, craziest thing about that. The more we are ourselves, the more we are accepted and loved by those who truly accept and love us. So we have this drive culturally, and I don't need to get into all the details of why that is or how that is. You all are smart enough to probably know most of that, or know the research behind that, know the data. So we don't have to go too deep into that, but we can sometime if you want to ask about that as a topic another time. But suffice it to say for today, when we stop contorting ourselves, when we actually lean in and fill in who we actually are fully, who we really start embracing and embodying our fullness of ourselves, all the complexities, all the weirdness, all the woo, all the mundane stuff, right? All the silly stuff, the things that we think are not allowed in certain scenarios, right? And haven't been allowed, frankly. I mean, that's not something we made up. But when we embrace all those things, that is when we start connecting with the people who really can love, appreciate, and accept us. And that is when we feel safe. So I have a coach colleague who said the other day in a mastermind that I'm in, was so smart. He goes, you know what? 25% of people are going to love me, 25% of people are going to hate me, and 50% don't give a shit. So I might as well talk to the 25% who love me, right? And I loved the simplicity of that. It was so smart and so right on. It's like, why do we bother trying to make other people happy when we know they're not going to be happy no matter what? Or if they might end up loving us if we lean in more to who we are, to the crazy of who we are, right? All right. So your higher leader is the one that is calling you into your leadership roles. It is that voice in your head that has said to you all along, you are meant for more. You are meant to do big things. You are meant to do something amazing. You are meant to help. You are meant to serve. You are meant to expand. You are meant to have an amazing life. It is that voice that we're going to call your higher leader, the one that pushes you further than other people go. Now, there is this concept in my industry right now about everyone is a leader. And let me be really clear about that. So everyone has the potential to be a leader because everyone has influence over other people, right? We all have influence, whether we choose to acknowledge it or not, whether we choose to accept it or not, whether we choose to embrace it or not, and make a conscious decision, take responsibility for that or not. We all have influence over other people, right? Think about when you're walking down the street and somebody smiles at you and you smile back, right? They've influenced you. Or when somebody, you get into a car accident and the other person is screaming and yelling at you, right? They're influencing you. Not in a way that feels good, but it's still influence. Okay, so yes, we all lead each other, absolutely. And there are some of us that have this voice, and maybe more of us than we know, but some of us are able to hear it more clearly for whatever reason. Some of us are able to hear this voice that calls us forward and says, you are meant for something amazing. So most of us, when we've heard that voice, we heard it really early, like really early. And for some of us, what happens is that we were told to ignore it, or we were told, there's kind of an old adage about women or girls being bossy, right? Men or boys are leaders and girls are bossy, right? So some of us grew up with that. Some of us grew up talking about magic and intuition and manifestation, or creating things, right? The manifestation word is kind of a relatively new phenomenon in pop culture. But being able to do things that other people can't do from an early age, and people might have said to you, "Oh, don't talk like that," or "We don't really believe in magic," right? Or but maybe it was in the context of prayers being answered, right? I prayed on this and I prayed for miracles, right? But miracles don't really happen. That may have been something that you heard. They're not really for us. They're only for other people. Another version of this, by the way, is money doesn't grow on trees. And there's a whole kind of umbrella about money and magic and manifestation, but we can get into that another time too. But that's another kind of, it's common, like, oh, well, it's just not available to us all the time. There's a limited amount of things that we can do. There are limits to our abilities. There are limits to our potential. There are limits to what is available to you because of who you are, because of how you grew up, because of where you grew up, because of your education level, blah, 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 blah. Now, I'm not saying that some of those limits aren't real. That is to say, I'm not saying that they aren't true for people. There certainly are circumstances where there are limits. And also, there are ways in which we can exceed those limits if we understand how it works. If we understand how energy works, if we understand how manifestation works, if we understand how connection, that's great, good English, connecting works with other people, collaboration, getting in that creative zone of genius, connecting to your higher leader. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Maybe not. Excuse me. Okay, maybe because I'm talking about magic. All right, so what does this mean for you? First of all, I want to know who out there is in touch with your higher leader. Who out there has heard those voices in their head? And I'm not talking about the schizophrenic voices that are telling you to do things that are not good for you. I'm talking about that inner call. Who out there has heard that inner call? I know there are people out there who have. So drop in the comments. Yes, I have. Yes, this is me. Yes, you're talking to me. Tell me what the call is. Tell me, what are you called for? Because so many of you are in leadership positions or have leadership potential that you haven't tapped into fully yet. What are you being called forward to do? I'm going to give you a couple of examples of where this is. Courtney Nelson. I know you have, girl. Tell me about your magic, because I know you have oodles of it. You are like exude magic. Super excited. Okay, so but I want to hear more about it, Courtney. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my magic. So from an early age, I believed in magic, and I was definitely, I don't know that I was actually told not to believe it, because I actually had a really supportive family in this regard. Like my parents were both creative people. I was an only child, so I was left to my own devices a lot in terms of living my own kind of imagination. I'm just going to bring Courtney up here for a second. Yes, for sure, she said. I mean, look at her. She's just magical. Look at her. That picture is just magical. And she's laughing at me for calling her out. But it's true, right? Totally true. You are like, you're just oozing buckets. Okay, so I had, but it also scared me. So this is something that I think is really important to talk about. I have recently been working with an intuitive coach and a certification program. I'm going to say that again because I stumbled over it, and I think this is part of it. Part of the energy I'm still struggling with coming out myself. I'm coming out of the magic closet. An intuitive coach to become a certified intuitive coach. So I'm in a certification program that helps me delve into these intuitive gifts and helps me use them, and then helps me use them to serve others. Okay. So when I was a kid, I was extremely sensitive to ideas of spirit and magic, and it scared me a lot. You're going to laugh about this because this is pretty funny, but looking back now, although I can still feel the fear about this, I can still feel the terror about it. But when I was a kid, so Ghostbusters came out when I was like 7, right? And I had a bunch of kids around me. I think it was in like 2nd or 3rd grade, right? And all these kids around me were like, oh my God, it's so funny. It's hilarious. I saw it with my parents. We laughed the whole time. I went into the movie theater. I was super excited to laugh the whole time. And remember that very first scene in the library when there's the ghost of the librarian, and they go down to the basement of the New York Public Library and they see her. And I saw the ghost, and I was like immediately like completely compelled and terrified. And then the part of this is right in the very beginning of the movie where she comes towards the camera and goes, rah! And I had this big, God, I'll never forget this. I had this big giant like soda in my lap, and I got so terrified that I screamed bloody murder, and I squeezed the soda so hard and it went everywhere, flying all around me. My mom was like startled. She's like, what's wrong? Everybody around me was like laughing at the show, and also laughing at me for being terrified. And from that moment on, I was like gripping, I was like hiding my face. I was so terrified of Ghostbusters because I felt it was real. Now, I'm not just saying because I was 7 and I felt it was real, because that is also a psychological transition point where we start to understand the difference between, I'm going to say this a different way, actually. We start to differentiate between what we believe is fantasy and reality. Okay. So that's that 7-8-year-old range, psychologically speaking. But for me, it was real because I truly, truly like identified with being able to see the spirit world. Now, I never actually have seen spirits. Like I'm not somebody who sees spirits, but I am somebody who hears them. This is kind of scary, you guys, because I'm talking about this and I haven't really talked about this publicly, really. I kind of post about it a little bit, but I haven't really talked about it. So bear with me, and thank you for sticking with me today as I come out of this spiritual closet. But I'll tell you, that's when I realized that I was different, was in that moment. And by the way, we all have these abilities. It's just that some of us are more in tune with them than others. Maybe it's because I was an only child growing up, and so I was left alone a lot with that, But my mother actually cultivated some of this in me, and I really appreciate that about my upbringing. I was born and raised in Northern California, right there, Big Sur area, Monterey Peninsula. And growing up there in the 80s and 90s, we talked a lot about spirit and source, and and crystals. I got to go to crystal fairs and psychic fairs, and my mom would pay for like very high-end psychics to come from when I was a pretty young kid, maybe 10, 11 years old, to get readings from people. And these are not like people who are like $5 in the storefront. This is some people who travel the world giving very, very high-end readings. And I got those opportunities. My mother also belonged to a dream group, and where we would go a couple Sundays a month and hang out at my godmother's house, and a bunch of these really powerful women would talk around, sit in the hot tub and drink wine and talk about dreams and manifesting and spirit. And I got to kind of be around that. And actually, I just visited my godparents last week in California, and I got to have dinner with them, and my godmother and I talked again about this. And she reminded me a lot of these roots of me. So thank you so much, Shelley. I love you. Anyway, but so that got packaged for me into religion for a while. When I met my husband Peter, my first husband, who you've heard me talk a lot about if you've followed me at all, that was one of those moments where I knew instantly, boom, it was like intuition. I saw him. I knew it. We both knew it from the moment we met. We were like, had both come out of difficult relationships just very recently. And we just met and we instantly connected. I'm like, oh yeah, I know you. And I've known you before, and I'll probably know you again. We've probably been around each other a lot, right? In different forms, in different lives, and different experiences. And because it was instant, there was like connection. It was like we knew each other forever. And then, fast forward to 12 years later. Well, first of all, also I knew that when I met my first child, Elijah, when I met his birth mom and her sister and him in her belly, the instant like this, right? We were connected like that. So that was a no-brainer. We were like, oh yeah, it wasn't just the baby. It was the family, where it's like, oh yeah, we're connected, and we're still that way. We don't even see each other that often, but I did see them. And I'll post about this later too. But she recently got married, and Elijah was her ring bearer, their ring bearer in their wedding. It was so beautiful, and so I'll talk more about that. But talk about magic, man! And she's also identifies as a witch, and she's just beautiful, beautiful spirit. So anyway, all these things to tell you that, oh, also when I met my twins, it was like, oh yeah, those are my kids. Okay, we're done. So I just scooped them up, basically, metaphorically scooped them up. And then we had a family. And I wish it were quite that easy in logistically. It wasn't, but essentially that's what it was, spiritually speaking. So then when Peter died, I was so blown away by the whole process of that. And I'm bringing this up specifically this week because many of you saw the post that I put this week about when he died and how I said that I don't miss him. And, I said that a little bit for shock factor because I knew it would get you to read it. And it worked. But the reason that I don't miss him, and I did miss him, by the way, for a long time in the physical way, right? I miss him being physically present. But immediately upon his transitioning, and I mean immediately, like within a couple of hours, I got that email that said, choose well, choose wisely, choose love, from the energy healer that was supporting us through his process. And she had those words that he left for me, for us, not just for me, but for me, to you, to express to the world, right? From his perspective. So beyond the grave already, I get this message, right? Within a couple of hours of his passing, maybe not even. And from that moment on, y'all, I was hearing him. And this is so scary for me to say because it's like, I know you're going to think I'm all crazy, or I feel like that, but I'm just going to tell you straight out. I was hearing him. And I don't mean that I was hearing auditory hallucinations. I just had them. It was like, it frankly got a little frustrating for a little while because it was constant messages, constant. I need to say this, I need to tell you this, it was like writing all the time. Peter says this, like when we were planning his funeral, and I remember talking to his brothers. Oh my gosh, they probably thought I was nuts. Talking to his brothers in the parking lot of the church where his funeral was. And his funeral was this incredible like celebration. And his brothers are musicians. And one of his brothers was saying, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know that I can do it. I don't know that I can be present for him and run this mass, which is what he does all the time. And he's incredibly gifted at it. And I said, turn him on, and Pete, it was in my ear. Pete was like, he has to do it. Tell him to do it. Tell him to stop jerking around and do it. And I looked at him, I'm like, Peter says you have to do that. And he looked at me and goes, well, then I guess I have to. So, so I started having these very visceral experiences of hearing these messages. And, anyway, so suffice it to say, I could tell you so many stories about this, but I want to turn it over now that I've talked for a long time about me. I'm trying to give you the permission to talk about what it's like for you, right? What is it like for you to have that higher leader? Where are the messages that you are getting from? Because mine don't just come from Peter. Mine, that's one set, and he does tease me all the time about it still too. And I'm happy to talk about that now. But intuition, those moments where you land and you go, that's what I'm supposed to do. So many of us, y'all, are trained to not listen. We are trained to live up to the narrative that somebody else has set forth for us. Whatever, for myriad reasons, right? I mean, there's so many reasons for that. Maybe it's about safety and security. Maybe it's about I'm supposed to be an engineer, a lawyer, or a doctor, right? Because I need to make a lot of money so I can be successful and have good standing and marry the right person and have the right, all that stuff. Those are culturally real. So I'm not dismissing that. What I am saying is we abandon ourselves. We abandon ourselves so that we can live into somebody else's version of our life. And I've done it too. I've done it over and over and over. So you are not alone here. But your inner leader is the one calling you forth. So how are you getting called forth? Courtney, I'm going to bring up your explanation here. Courtney says, my magic wand, is helping people work through pain points, often physical pain points, and helping them find their way to next steps. So much of it is about energy flow and mindset. But when you get into a personal training session, it's all intertwined. Yes, it is, right? There's that bifurcating thing, or more than bifurcating, it's splitting off in all kinds of places, right? We tend to think that the body is different than the mind, is different than the spirit, is different than the soul, is different than what I'm supposed to do here on earth. No. We are one being. Yes, we have a physical body. And yes, our energy is embodying that physical body right now. And so we have this physical body for our use, for our benefit, hopefully not for our abuse, although, that's part of it too. And sometimes we're feeling out of sync with our energy, out of sync with our purpose, with our higher leader, with my higher coach, our higher leader, your higher parent, your higher boss, your higher whatever it is, right? And we have many of them, by the way. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. But yes, we are one entity with many different expressions. So as leaders, and I have a client who said this so beautifully that I'm going to say it over and over and over again. I cannot be an inspirational leader if I am not inspired. And the things that inspire us are what light up our energy, our inner leader, our higher self, right? That's what inspiration is when we are in alignment with that purpose. And we know we're in alignment when we light up. So the things that make you feel really good about who you are and what you do. And I'm not talking about the external things like, alcohol, drugs, all those things. I'm a coffee drinker. You're also my last vice. I also love sugar, which I'm working on. Those are all good things, right? Everything is good when moderation can be. Anyway, I shouldn't say it all is definitively, but it can be good. And it can feel good. But I'm not talking about the short-term stuff. I'm talking about the deep, meaningful, connected, feeling good, feeling purposeful, feeling alive, feeling aligned. When you walk into a room and you see the person that you love most in the world and they light you up, that's alignment. When you walk into a room and you are embodying your gifts and you just know that this is what you're meant to do, that's alignment. That is your higher leader saying, yes, you are in service. You are in full expression and you can expand from here. I remember saying a long time ago, I went to a Catholic school. I went to Episcopal grammar school and Catholic high school. Interestingly enough, I was neither Episcopal nor Catholic growing up, at least my family was not. They were actually very anti-religion in some ways, but these are the great schools to go to. So I was blessed to go to them. And in the Catholic school, I remember the story of one of the nuns that was a teacher there a long time ago, long before I was even there. And they told the story about how she says, I'm an excellent math teacher. That doesn't make me cocky. It doesn't make me arrogant. I'm not good at lots of other things, but I'm an excellent math teacher. Right. And I love that. It's like, I know what I'm good at and I know where I'm not so good. And I'm cool with that. Like, I don't have to be good at everything, but I'm good at this thing. And I love doing it because it lights me up. Right. So whether we call that our gifts from God, or whether we call that our purpose, our dharma, whatever contextualizing you want to do around it, it's all similar language for the same thing. So, and Courtney, thank you so much for sharing that, because I know I've actually watched you from afar, right? And we've talked a little bit recently about how you are expanding and connecting all of your gifts and realizing that like your gifts through science and physiology and exercise and fitness is now expanding into your knowledge, your soul knowledge about energy um, and all the essential oil work that you've done, and like how all of this is connected, all the intricacies of that is so beautiful. And they are deeply, deeply connected in you, right? They're deeply connected in you and all around us. So these facets that we play with, that we say um, are, that they seem separate to us. They are not. We are not separate from other elements. They might be categorized and they might be organized, and that's okay. But that doesn't mean they are not connected, right? So, um, so thank you for hearing me come out of the closet today, the magic closet today. I thought it was particularly appropriate because of this being the anniversary of Peter's birthday, or was his birthday on the 18th. He would have been 50 this year, and he passed when he was 40. Um, so it was kind of a poignant moment for us, for my family, and for his family, and remembering all of that. And Courtney says here too, she says, yes, I never would have thought energy and spirituality would tie into any of my degrees in science. Aha, but we need it all. Absolutely. And I often say that, and I'm not a scientist by training. I often say though that science is the how, right? It doesn't explain necessarily the why. Why is really about spirit and about purpose and soul connection and all of that. And I think maybe some scientists would disagree with me in some ways. Like, no, there is a how, and we can talk about like evolutionary theory and all that stuff. Or there is a why there, and like we evolve because we need an adaptation. Sure, absolutely. I'm talking about the greater why, right? The greater purpose. And I love science. I love the how. I think it's beautiful. So I'm certainly not knocking any of that. It's amazing. We need all that knowledge because the deeper we understand it, the more we understand how connected we are, right? Neuroscience, quantum physics, these things are starting to become more and more clear at how they're all connected. It's really, talk about miracles. We live in magic all the time, if only we listen and we see. So I'm also curious about you all. And hey, Chris, so good to see you. So I'm also curious about how you all define your magic, how you define your gifts, and how they manifest for you. And maybe I should do a whole nother like leadership live about manifestation too. I think maybe I'll do that in a few weeks. But also, by the way, I'm noticing that maybe some of the comments aren't coming through, so I'm sorry about that. StreamYard's being a little fussy today, so I will go back and check out the comments later too, if you're in a different pocket than I am seeing them. At any rate, what are your gifts? And maybe if you don't want to share them today, I would like you to encourage you to think about it. If you're a journaler or a meditator, maybe ask yourself some of these questions. Where is my magic? What if we called it magic? Just straight up, we just called it magic. Like the magic of Disney, right? Disney owns that shit. Like they embrace it. They call it magic. And yet they're making it happen. It's still magic, right? So just embrace that. Like, let's call it magic. So where is your magic? Where are your gifts showing up in ways that seem like they don't make sense? They don't make logical sense. And yet they're true. They're there. I would love to hear more from you. It is almost 10:30. I've been talking straight for a half an hour. So I'm going to sign off today. But I would love to hear in the comments more. And Chris, since you've chimed in, I would love to hear about your magic because I know that you have it. I know you. But share your magic, y'all. Come back in the comments and put them back in here if you want, or come reach out to me in a DM and say, hey, I totally was excited about your conversation about your higher leader and your intuition and your magic and your abilities, your psychic abilities, your intuitive abilities. And these also, by the way, just real quick, they also show up in lots of different ways. So auditory, visual, sensory, that's one of mine, is I actually pick up people's feelings, and I'm learning that how to differentiate my feelings from other people's feelings. I had a really intense experience about that last week, which I finally kind of got. I was like, oh, this is what empathy is. Got it. Okay, now I understand. Hey, Adrian, thanks so much. I know you and I have these great conversations about this too. And so I know you understand this, and I love to think about magical thoughts for you. And Adrian's a beautiful example. She is a powerful, powerful leader in a very kind of more traditional corporate setting, and yet she is bringing all this incredible magic to them, and they are loving it because she's magical. I mean, of course. Why would they? Everybody loves Adrienne because she's magical. So I'm just gonna bring that up and say, Adrienne, she says, I love it, Merritt. Lots to think about. Thanks for the magical thoughts and inspiration this morning. Thank you, Adrienne, for being here. And I always love when you chime in. And Chris says, I love it when someone shares a quote I said years ago that has changed the way they think and help them move forward. Yeah, that's right. Super cool, because you realize the influence that you have, even when you might just come out of your mouth like without even thinking. All of a sudden, you're like, oh my gosh, that really changed somebody. Yeah. And Ian, sci-fi magic eventually becomes science for sure. Oh my gosh. Right? How awesome is that? For sure. It's like sci-fi is like premonition, right? In some respects. I mean, I think about the Jetsons. I think about the Jetsons a lot, actually. But yeah, right. And the things that we think are fantasy are one day like, oh my gosh, they're actually aspirational. They're not just like random fantasies. These ideas bubble up in us because they're aspirations. They're dreams that we want to start working towards and make real. Oh, I love that, Ian. Yes. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Ian is in our group right now. Talk about a magical group of people. Holy crow. There's a place where inspiration really came into play for me. When I saw these people in front of me, I was like, yes, powerful, inspirational, magical people. And man, do we have it in spades in that group. So thank you, Ian, for sharing. All right. I really am going to stop talking. It's 10:31. Thank you all for being here today. Share your magic. Get inspired by your own higher leader, your own higher coach, your own higher artist, your own higher whatever it is. If you want more information or help or support in getting in tune with that intuition, please reach out to me in the DMs. Visit masterofonecoaching.com. Just opt into our mailing list, and we can help you become more magical. Thank you, Chris. I'll see you all later. Have a great weekend.